You've been learning wrong your entire life. Not because you're not smart enough, because you were taught that understanding comes before doing. Read the theory, then practice. Study the rules, then apply them. But the Japanese martial arts discovered something centuries ago that neuroscience is just now confirming. Your brain doesn't learn through understanding. It learns through imitation, then rebellion, then transcendence. It's called Shuhari, and it's the reason a 10-year-old can master a language you've been studying for 5 years. Today, you're learning how to learn. Now listen, I need you to really hear this because it's going to challenge everything you've been taught about education, about intelligence, about how human beings actually acquire skills. You think learning requires understanding. You think you need to comprehend the why before you can do the what. And I'm telling you right now, that belief, that assumption, is what's been slowing you down your entire life. This video is going to reveal something that's going to sound completely counterintuitive at first, maybe even offensive to your rational mind. But stay with me because by the end of this, you're going to understand why mastery begins with mindless imitation, not mindful analysis. Here's the truth. Your brain learns faster when you temporarily suspend critical thinking. I know that sounds backwards. I know it sounds like I'm asking you to turn off the very thing that makes you human. But what I'm actually asking you to do is recognize that you have two learning systems, and most people are using the slow one when they should be using the fast one. The three stages of Shuhari, and I'm going to break all of this down for you, create what neuroscientists call neuroplastic windows. These moments where your brain is maximally receptive to new information that traditional education completely misses. And this is why most so-called lifelong learners, people who are reading constantly, taking courses constantly, consuming information constantly, stay permanently stuck in stage one. They're collecting knowledge but never transforming. This isn't about working harder. It's about sequencing learning in the order your brain actually absorbs information. You're not a slow learner. You've just been using the wrong operating system. So let me take you inside a traditional Japanese calligraphy studio, because this is where the whole system becomes crystal clear. Imagine there's a Western student, brilliant woman, traveled all the way to Japan to study this ancient art. She has an art history degree. She's studied Chinese characters. She understands symbolism, composition theory, the philosophy of Zen aesthetics. She walks into the master's studio on the first day, and she's ready. She's excited. She's prepared. The master hands her a brush, points to a character on the wall, and says 5 words. Copy this character 1,000 times. And she stops. She looks at him, confused. She says, but what does it mean? What's the philosophy behind the stroke order? What's the historical context? What am I expressing with this character? And the master, without any emotion, without any explanation, just says 1 word, copy. She's insulted. I mean, really feel this. She flew across the world. She's invested time and money and energy into this. And this master, this supposed expert, is treating her like a child, like someone who can't think, like someone who just needs to mindlessly repeat something without understanding it. This feels mechanical. It feels robotic. Where's the creativity? Where's the self-expression? Where's the deep understanding she came here to find? But she needs his approval. She wants to learn. So she starts copying. First 50 repetitions, she's going through the motions. Her mind is somewhere else. She's thinking about dinner. She's thinking about whether this is a waste of time. She's wondering if the master is just a traditionalist who doesn't understand modern pedagogy, who's stuck in some ancient system that doesn't apply to contemporary learning. By repetition 200, her hand is cramping. She's bored. She genuinely hates this. Every fiber of her intellectual being is screaming that this is stupid, that she should be learning theory, that she should understand before she does. But then, around repetition 400, something strange starts to happen. Something she doesn't expect and can't quite name. She stops thinking. Not because she's trying to stop thinking, but because her hand just knows where to go now. The brush becomes an extension of her body. She's not consciously moving her wrist this way or applying pressure that way. It's happening. The movement is happening through her. By repetition 700, she starts noticing subtleties she couldn't see in the first 500. The way the ink pools slightly if you pause for a fraction of a second. The breathing rhythm that naturally emerges when you're in flow. The pressure variation that creates depth. She's not trying to notice these things. She's not analyzing. She just notices. By repetition 1000, she creates the most beautiful character she's ever made in her life. And here's the kicker. She doesn't know how she did it. The master walks over, looks at it, and says something that changes everything for her. He says, "Now you're in Shu. You've protected the form long enough that it's inside you, that it lives in your body, that it's become part of your procedural memory. Now we break it." And he hands her a different brush, different paper, and he says, "Make the character wrong, on purpose. Violate everything you just learned." She's completely confused now. She says, "Wait, isn't the point to do it right? Didn't I just spend all this time learning the correct form?" And the master smiles for the first time and says, "First, you obey. Then, you disobey. Then, you transcend obedience and disobedience. That's Shuhari." Now, I want you to think about how you learn to speak, because this is important. You didn't learn language by studying grammar. You didn't start with understanding sentence structure or verb conjugation or the rules of syntax. You learned by pure imitation. Mama. Dada. You just copied sounds without any comprehension of what they meant or why they worked. And your parents didn't sit you down with a grammar textbook when you were 18 months old and say, "Okay, before you can speak, you need to understand the underlying linguistic principles." That would be insane. But that's exactly what we do with adult learning. We insist on understanding before doing. Then, around age 2, you started breaking the rules. I go to the park. Creative error? You weren't being rebellious. You were experimenting. You were testing the patterns you'd absorbed. And through that experimentation, through those mistakes, you learned the exceptions, the nuances, the flexibility of language. By age 5, you were speaking fluently without knowing a single grammatical rule consciously. You couldn't diagram a sentence. You couldn't explain past participles. But you could communicate complex thoughts effortlessly. That's Shuhari. You went through all 3 stages naturally as a child. But we forget this as adults, and we try to learn through analysis first, and it cripples us. So let me tell you why copying works better than understanding. Because there's actual neuroscience behind this that's going to blow your mind. In the 1990s, there were these Italian neuroscientists studying monkey brains. They were doing research on motor cortex, trying to understand how the brain plans and executes movements. And one day, one of the researchers reached for a peanut while a monkey was watching, and the sensors they had attached to the monkey's brain went crazy. The same neurons that fired when the monkey reached for a peanut fired when it just watched the researcher reach for a peanut. The monkey's brain was practicing the action just by observing. They called them mirror neurons. And this discovery changed everything we thought we knew about learning. Your brain has a built-in imitation engine that activates before conscious thought. When you watch a master perform a skill, and I mean really watch, not analyze, not critique, just watch, your motor cortex is practicing. You're building neural pathways through observation alone. But here's what's absolutely fascinating, and this is the key. This only works when you're not trying to understand. The moment you shift into analytical mode, the moment you start asking, why are they doing it that way? You switch brain regions. You move from motor cortex, which handles procedural memory, to prefrontal cortex, which handles declarative memory. Different systems, different speeds, and procedural memory is faster. Let me map this to Shuhari so you can see how perfectly this ancient system aligns with modern neuroscience. Shu, which means protect the form, activates those mirror neurons and builds procedural memory. You're laying neural infrastructure without conscious interference. You're not thinking about what you're doing, you're just doing it repeatedly until the pattern becomes embedded in your body. Ha! Which means break the form, introduces what neuroscientists call prediction error. Your brain has learned to expect the pattern, and then you violate it. You do it backwards, you do it faster, you do it with different tools, and that violation creates a learning plasticity. Your neurons have to reorganize, they have to adapt. That's when understanding actually emerges, not from studying, but from breaking. RI, which means transcend the form, achieves what we call automaticity. The skill becomes unconscious, which frees your conscious mind for creativity, for improvisation, for responding to the unique demands of each moment. And this is why traditional education fails so many people. Schools teach backwards. They say, first understand the concepts, read the textbook, memorize the theory, and then maybe, if we have time, you can practice. But your brain can't build procedural memory through conceptual understanding. You can know intellectually how to play piano. You can understand music theory. You can study chord progressions and rhythm patterns and finger positioning. And you can still sound absolutely terrible when you sit down at the piano because your motor cortex hasn't learned. Your body doesn't know, and your body learns through repetition, not comprehension. Shuhari says, let your body learn first. Trust that your mind will catch up later. And it does. It always does. Think about driving a car. You didn't learn by studying the physics of momentum and friction coefficients and the engineering principles of internal combustion engines. You learned by copying. Your instructor said, turn the wheel this much, press the pedal this hard, check your mirrors in this sequence. Pure imitation. You did it badly at first. You jerked, you stalled, you oversteered, but you kept copying until it smoothed out. Then you entered Ha. You started breaking the rules. You experimented with different speeds. You tried different approaches to parallel parking. You tested how sharp you could take a corner. And through that experimentation, you developed judgment, intuition, feel. Now you're in Rye. You drive without thinking about it. You can have an entire conversation while navigating complex traffic because the skill has become unconscious. That freed mental space is what allows you to problem solve, to navigate, to respond to the unexpected. That's the gift of Re. You transcended the technique. But I need to be honest with you about something, because Shuhari can be misused, and I don't want you to take the system and turn it into something rigid or toxic. If you stay in Shu forever, if you never move beyond copying, you become a robot. You become technically proficient but soulless. You can reproduce, but you can't create. If you skip Shu and jump straight to Ha, if you start experimenting before you've built the foundation, you're just making stuff up. You're building on sand. And if you try to start at Rai, if you try to find your own voice before you've internalized any tradition, you're not transcending anything. You're just improvising without skill. The sequence matters. Each stage builds on the previous one. You have to trust the process even when it feels wrong, even when your intellectual mind is screaming that you should understand first. So let me break down the actual principles of each stage so you know exactly what you're doing and why. Shu, protect the form, is about humble copying. You suspend judgment. You find a master, and that could be a person, a video, a book, a recording, doesn't matter. And you copy them exactly. Not inspired by them. Not in the style of them. You copy them. You don't add your flavor yet. You don't make it your own. That comes later. Right now, you're building the neural pattern, and volume matters more than understanding. Every repetition creates something called myelin, which is a fatty sheath that wraps around your neural pathways and makes the signal travel faster. You're literally building brain infrastructure. This is not wasted time. This is not mindless drudgery. This is you laying the foundation for everything that comes after. Break the form is creative rebellion. Once you can execute the form without thinking, once it's become automatic, that's when you start violating it intentionally. What happens if I do this backwards? What happens if I do it twice as fast? What happens if I use completely different tools? What happens if I apply this technique in a totally different context? This is where cognitive flexibility develops. You're discovering why the rules exist by seeing what happens when you break them. You're learning the boundaries, the constraints, the principles underlying the technique. And here's what most people miss. Most people try to skip shu and start at ha. They want to be creative immediately. They want to express themselves without first internalizing any tradition. And that's why they plateau. That's why their creativity feels shallow or derivative. Because real creativity, deep creativity, emerges from first mastering constraint. Transcend the form is unconscious mastery. The form dissolves. You're no longer following rules and you're no longer breaking rules. You're responding to reality directly. Jazz musicians who've reached don't think about scales anymore. They've practiced scales so deeply, so thoroughly, that they've forgotten them consciously. And now they just play what the moment demands, what the other musicians are doing, what the room feels like, what wants to emerge. This stage can't be taught. It can only emerge from deep shu and playful ha. You can't force it. You can't rush it. It arrives when it arrives. And here's the paradox at the heart of Shuhari, the thing that makes it so powerful and so misunderstood. Freedom comes from first accepting constraint. Creativity emerges from first mastering imitation. You can't transcend what you haven't internalized. The artist who's studied every master, who's copied their techniques until those techniques are in their bones, that artist can break free and create something genuinely new. The artist who rejects all tradition, who insists on pure originality from day one, ends up creating something that feels untethered, shallow, unconvincing, because they have nothing to push against. They have no foundation to build from. So, let me give you the exact implementation. Let me make this practical right now so you can use it today. Stage 1, shu practice. Choose one skill you want to learn, just one, not 5, one, and find one master example. One video, one piece of writing, one performance, one demonstration. Not 10 different approaches, not a comparison of various styles. One, and copy it exactly 10 times. I mean exactly. If it's writing, retype their essay word for word. If it's speaking, record yourself saying their exact script. If it's a physical skill, mirror their exact movements, and resist the urge to improve it or personalize it. That's your ego trying to skip stages. Your only goal right now is precision imitation. Can you reproduce what the master did? That's it. That's the whole game in shu. Stage 2, ha practice. After you've done 10 perfect copies, after the form is inside you, make 10 broken copies, 10 intentional violations. Change one variable each time, different speed on one, different tone on another, different context on the third. Exaggerate something on the fourth, minimize something on the fifth. You're not trying to improve it yet. You're testing the boundaries, and keep a journal. Write down, when I changed X, Y happened. When I removed this element, I lost this quality. When I added this element, I gained this quality. This is where understanding actually emerges. Not from reading about it, from experimenting with it. Stage 3, repractice. Stop copying and stop breaking. Don't reference the original anymore. Create something new in the same domain. Write your own piece. Give your own speech. Perform your own technique. And notice what naturally emerges. You'll find elements of the master's form woven into your unique expression, but it won't feel like copying anymore. It'll feel like discovering your voice. This is You can't manufacture it. You can't fake it. It arrives as a natural consequence of deep shu and playful ha. And here's something critical I need you to understand. Most complex skills require cycling through Shuhari multiple times at different levels. You reach in beginner techniques, and then you encounter advanced techniques, and you have to go back to shu. You're always spiraling. It's not linear. You don't graduate from Shuhari, you live in it. You cycle through it over and over as you deepen your mastery. You came here wanting to learn faster. I hope you're leaving with something deeper than a productivity hack. I hope you're leaving with permission to stop understanding and start doing. Shuhari teaches that mastery isn't about knowing more. It's about moving through three distinct modes of engagement with skill. Copy until copying disappears. Break until breaking teaches you the principles. Flow until flowing becomes your nature. You've learned today that your brain has an imitation engine that's more powerful than your analytical mind, and most education systems completely ignore it because they're designed around the assumption that understanding must come before doing. But that's backwards. Doing comes first. Understanding emerges later, and mastery arrives when you've moved through both and come out the other side. You've learned that creativity doesn't come from originality. It comes from deeply internalizing tradition and then naturally transcending it. The most original artists are the ones who've studied the most masters. The most innovative scientists are the ones who've mastered the fundamentals. The most creative thinkers are the ones who can hold multiple frameworks in their mind simultaneously because they've internalized so many. And you've learned that the reason you plateau, the reason you feel stuck, isn't lack of effort. It's not that you're not trying hard enough. It's that you're learning in the wrong sequence. You're trying to understand before you've built the procedural foundation that makes understanding meaningful. So here's the mantra I want you to carry forward. Here's what I want you to remember when you're frustrated, when learning feels slow, when you're tempted to skip stages. I am not a slow learner. I am a powerful imitator, waiting to remember how I learned everything as a child, by copying, breaking, flowing. If this reframe landed for you, if you felt relief when I said stop trying to understand and just copy, I want to hear from you in the comments. Tell me what you're going to learn using Shuhari. What's your first form? Who's the master you're going to copy? What skill are you finally going to unlock by learning in the right sequence? And if you want more frameworks like this, more ancient wisdom translated into neuroscience, the kind of content that doesn't just give you information but actually changes how you operate in the world, subscribe. Not for content, for transformation. You're not behind. You've just been using analysis where you needed imitation. You've been thinking where you needed doing. You've been understanding where you needed copying. Now you know the sequence. Now you know the system. Now go copy something perfectly. Your breakthrough is waiting on the other side of humble imitation.